if you didn't have to worry about if your kids were taken care of, you got your house for free, whatever kind of house you wanted, or whatever kind of car you wanted, what is it that you would do? And I'm gonna be honest, when I first asked myself that question, it was like a deer in headlights, and it scared the living bejesus out of me because I couldn't figure out what that answer was. And I was like, oh my gosh, I should have an answer for this, and I don't.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of From a Woman to a Leader. I'm your host, Limor Bergman, and today I'm speaking with Rashidat Odeyemi. Rashidat left a corporate career in fashion and traveled to 15 countries to figure out who she was outside her job title, and now she is a lifestyle coach helping high-achieving women fully enjoy life, not just win at work. And in the episode today, we get into how to dream again when work has eaten that part in you. Why putting a deadline on your goals quietly kills them. And how to find the 3 things you'd actually die on a hill for. So for those of you who ever felt like you're working to live instead of living to work, this one is for you. Are you ready? Let's dive right in. Hi, Rashidat, how are you?
I'm so good. How are you today, Limor?
I'm very well. Thank you so much. Let's kind of talk, Rashidat, about your journey and how you kind of left corporate, because you told me when we talked earlier that you were in corporate and you felt like you are working to live and not living to work.
Right.
And that sentence really resonated with me. So I'd love to hear more about it.
Right. I think, we all kind of start as a kid. We're like, what do you want to be when we grow up? And you choose all these things that feel very exciting. And then at 17, you decide what you're going to do for the rest of your life. And I don't know why it works like that, but it's the way that it does. And so I decided I was going to go into fashion, and not really knowing what that looked like, I went into fashion, but then I got into my career and I was like, man, is this all there is? It's just another version of being a worker bee. And at that point, I wasn't really I didn't have the language to really describe what I felt was missing. But I said, I think I want to find what more looks like. I know I want more than this. And so I don't have a clue what that looks like. I'm going to bite the bullet. I had paid off my last student loan payment. I was completely debt free. And I was like, this is actually the perfect time to explore. So I quit my job and I traveled the world for a year, and I went on this journey to really understand what I wanted from life and how I was going to still make money, but figure out how I was going to do it in a way that made me feel alive, so that I didn't have 40 hours a week that's the most of the time that I was awake, where I felt like I was just doing the next thing.
For sure. I think that, first of all, I highly resonate with you because I felt the same. I know many women feel the same, right? They feel something is not aligned, but they don't know what to do. So we are here to help them.
Yes, exactly.
So how do you allow yourself to dream? How do you make that happen?
So especially like continuing from where I said I left my job and I decided to travel the world for the year. While that was very exciting, I think the other part of it was just the community that I was in really made space for me to ask the questions. And it's one of the things that the core of what I do in my program now is I create space and ask questions that we don't really have anybody asking us before anymore. Like maybe as a kid, someone asked us, what do we want to do when we grow up? But once you get to like 16, 17, they're like, it's not about how do you want to be yourself? It's more like, how are you going to make money? And that's a slight nuance that we miss, especially in a capitalist society where It's no longer about what do I want to do that's going to bring me alive and I will make money because of it. It's more about how do you make money and hopefully you're not dead in the process. Two very different perspectives on this same orb. And so when I create this space that says, okay, if you didn't have to worry about money, if you didn't have to worry about if your kids were taken care of, you got your house for free, whatever kind of house you wanted, or whatever kind of car you wanted, what is it that you would do? And I'm going to be honest, when I first asked myself that question, it was like a deer in headlights, and it scared the living bejesus out of me because I couldn't figure out what that answer was. And I was like, oh my gosh, I should have an answer for this, and I don't. And so everybody has that moment. And then I have steps that allows us to break back or peel back all the pieces and say, oh, what about this? And what about that? And it starts with getting back to, well, who am I outside of work? Who am I outside of work? Like, I know I spend a lot of time there, but there's a lot more to me than the things that I do at work. And then from that, we start playing around with what if you did this more? What if you did that more? And it becomes this space of discovery, of understanding ourselves in a deeper way. We all feel like we understand ourselves, but there's so much more of ourselves to really understand and know who we are and the different tools and things. And so we use those tools to bring that out, and then we dream from there. Otherwise, dreaming can feel overwhelming, but it's a really beautiful thing. And so that's how I help us lead back into that process. Because a lot of us, I know for me, it was like, I forgot how to dream. I've been so busy just doing the next thing. All I could think of, well, what do I do after that? And I wanted us to take all of that away and dream from this purity, like refreshment, like take it all the way back kind of perspective.
Yeah, and I think, Rasha, that you said something that really resonated with me. Who am I outside of work? And I think when I worked in corporate and the people I met with were all employees. Obviously, all my friends were kind of working as employees. And I think the environment, right, heavily impact who you are, because your friends kind of, if you surround yourself with people like you, so probably you're not going to find something else. And not that there's anything wrong with being an employee, but I think that the symptom I saw is that people really define themselves by their title. And everyone, especially men, right? Oh, I'm a VP, I'm a director, I'm this and that. And I was always very annoyed by the fact that even if you go to social events, everyone is just bogged down with the titles and what do you do at work. And I never really wanted to talk about it because that doesn't define who I am.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And another thing you said about taking time to realize that, because this is really difficult to find space and to think about those things when you're so bogged down with work and with the day to day.
Right. It's so beautiful too, because we know that we're all more than that. And yet we don't get enough spaces to talk about what those things are. Like at work, I was a technical designer, which meant that I helped my designer take their design and work with the factory to do grading and fitting and all of the details. But those were tasks that I did. Outside of that, I'm a problem solver. I'm super creative. I am process oriented. I get excited about like exploring things. Those are the things of who we are, like who you actually are. The tasks that you do at work are just tasks. And so when we get to that space, like you said, you go into, I've tried to do this, and it's so interesting how ingrained it is in our community. Same as you. We go into a networking event. I'm like, hey, like, how are you? Tell me something about you, or trying to find a question that gets them past, what do you do? And I will say, well, I love to help people find a new way to deeply enjoy life rather than just be bogged down by work. And they're like, but what do you do? They're literally asking for the title.
That's not a job.
And I'm like, but that's actually what I do inside the title. Like it's so ingrained in us. And so it is hard. And yet this is why I do it, because say you don't, something happens and you get fired from your job, or you don't even get fired. Maybe you just decide you don't want to do that anymore. And now you're like, well, who am I? What do I actually do? It makes you feel stuck. You've put yourself in that box. But when I work with people, work with my clients, I help you come out of that box, be born refreshed out of that box to figure out, man, there's so many other ways that I could be my fullest self if I allowed myself to see the depth of who I am. So it's this beautiful, I like to think of it as a reawakening. Or maybe sometimes we've never known those depths of who we are because we didn't have people to talk about it. But being able to connect back to that is the first step to dreaming, and then actually building a life where you're like, this is not as hard as I thought. I just didn't have the clarity and the detail to be able to build it because I had a vague idea. I didn't actually have a blueprint yet.
Yeah. So, Rashida, tell us, maybe I know that you probably have a whole process and we cannot talk about everything, but maybe some questions that women that listen to us can start asking themselves to get outside of the limitations that we all put ourselves up, right? Those boxes.
Right, right. So I would say the first step would be take a second and write down, like, what are all the roles that you do, and kind of put them in a bit of a priority. So you're an employee, you're a mom, you're a sister, you're a daughter, you are a wife, whatever those roles, a godmom, all of those things. And then looking at all of those things, kind of start pulling back. If I wasn't a mom, what would I be doing? If I wasn't this, what do I think I would be doing? And it's a little bit of just asking yourself, this is where my life is now. But in some ways, I want to ask myself, what do I think is missing? And it's not to say that I don't love, because I still do this even now having my own business and I love what I do. And I still ask myself, well, is there some part of me that I'm not allowing myself to use enough? And that's probably the part that feels like it's missing. And so I start asking myself and writing those things down. And then I can actually use that list to start saying, well, how can I start doing these things more? Now, obviously, there's more to that process that can feel a little overwhelming, but it is a question that you can sit down and start pondering on and start asking yourself, because then it's less about what is my identity. Sometimes that feels heavy and it feels like something you should know. And just ask yourself, well, if I were to add something fun into my life, what am I adding in? Instead of taking away, what am I adding in to help bring me more alive and help me live fuller or closer to who I feel I actually fully am?
Yeah. And I like to ask women that I coach several questions. I mean, I like to ask them, what would you do for free, even without being paid? Because a lot of times we give back to our community, right? And this is how it started for me. I was mentoring women pro bono, and I did that willingly. And I still do that to some extent. And it's like, yeah, if you do something, if you are willing to do something for free, it means that you really enjoy it. So how about getting paid for that?
Right. 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 But also too, I also think there's a point where at least a lot of the women where I start, they have been doing a lot of things that they probably would do for free, but they've overextended themselves because there's been a love for it. And I am so passionate about seeing my clients not be burnt out on their dreams. I have personally been burnt out on my dreams because I have not had great boundaries to say, how can I do this in a way that allows me to be fulfilled and not overgive? And so in the way, I love where you're saying, like, what would you do for free? And also balancing that with saying, okay, what are good boundaries that allow me to keep this so it's actually fulfilling in my life and never gets to the point where it becomes something I hate? Because going after, even in our career, we get so bogged down with, I have to keep moving forward. We don't celebrate our wins.
Yeah.
We don't think about how much progress we've made. we don't actually pause and rest because we get so bogged down with, I have to do the next thing. I have to accomplish my dreams. I have to be ambitious, ambition. Like, it's like grueling. And it's like, actually, what does it look like to pause? What does it look like to just be? And that's why I love asking questions about identity, because even in our own ambition, it's not just about corporate America. Some of it is within us. We have to create boundaries within us that says, I can make time to rest and I have to choose it. Nobody is going to choose it for me. I have to choose it for myself. And what does it look like to be okay with me today, where I am right now, not doing anything, simply being?
Absolutely. And I think as women, we don't give ourselves enough
Credit.
Yeah, we push ourselves too hard. We give, and don't take care of ourselves enough. So sure, I completely agree with you. And by the way, I didn't mean that you should just give your time for free.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I think it's just a way to find something you're passionate about, because a lot of women say, I don't know. I don't know even what I'm good at, because I'm so used to this job that I'm doing, and this is what defines me. And as I said, you're not just defined by your job.
Agreed. Absolutely agreed.
So tell us, when you realized, you said you traveled, and you told me also you traveled like 20 different countries, which is exciting by itself.
It is. I enjoyed myself. It was, again, a very big discovery process. My mom had put travel and exploration in me, adventure in me since I was a kid. And so there was an opportunity to do missions in 11 different countries. And then I added more countries for my own sake, because it was as much as it is in a similar way that you were saying, like, what would I do for free? Travel is something I would do for free. I would pay to do, obviously. But in that, it was also an opportunity just to explore myself in different environments, because different environments bring out different things in you. And in that, also allowing myself, well, what if these things brings me joy? Because sometimes the things that might bring us even more joy we haven't even experienced yet. And so I went to, and like I said, about 15 different countries within that. Yeah.
Wow. So experimentation is a big thing. Tell me, Rashidat, how did you find, your calling, like what you want to do?
It was me exploring again, coming back to the self-discovery.
Yeah.
I was having fun. I was doing the things, and someone actually pointed out to me, hey, I'm not good at that. You're really good at that. Can you help me? And it was something that I was like, I didn't even think that and it's almost one of those things. This is why I think it's so, yes, experimentation, but experimentation with other people around you, because you need a mirror to reflect back some of the things that are beautiful about you that you do naturally. You see the things that you do intentionally, but there's so many beautiful things about us that we do naturally that if we knew what those were the things we would actually make a business out of. Because we wake up and it's like, oh, I just woke up and I'm just living my life today. And so I had someone mirror it back to me that, hey, you're really good at like this problem solving thing. And not only that, like, you're really good at making it fun and making it simple for other people to figure out how to do it too. And I was like, yeah, I wouldn't have seen that. It's like one of those, it's like a good blind spot, because usually we think of blind spots as a bad thing. Oh, I didn't see that. But no, it was literally something that I just did so naturally. And so I started exploring, how could I help other people do that? Little by little, it became my coaching practice, starting back in 2018 at this point, and it's now 2026. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Unbelievable how the years fly by.
Right.
And Rashidat, when you realize a direction, or at least something that you feel like you want to do, walk us a little bit through your process. Like, how do you make that from something in your head to reality?
Well, I would say I didn't do it the best way the first time around. That's what I'm going to start with. The first time around, I quit everything and I was just like, I'm gonna jump straight in and I'm just gonna try it. And there is something beautiful about that. I would say it's more of a both and. Not that I did what was wrong. And I also wish I would have had at least a side gig or to keep my finances stable, because it's been an up and down. And that's especially as a new entrepreneur, as you're really getting your footing, you learn. This is the thing that I understood early, but I couldn't, it took me time to overcome. The thing that you do naturally, you can naturally give that away, and that's easy to make into a business. Learning how to build the business is the part that takes time and investment and help, and a different side of learning about yourself. And so it really started with, okay, if this is something that I can give away easily, let me just start trying to give it away. And so I did that for a little while. And after about 6 or 7 people, I started noticing a trend of, I always come back to this same thing, this same thing. And that kind of became my life message. And then from that, I was like, okay, this is evidently the thing that I should give away. Now, how do I market it, and what kind of business model? And that's been the part that's taken me a longer time to figure out how to market it and what kind of business model. Because now, back in the day, it was just like someone has to come and work with you in person. Now there's just so many ways to do it with online. So that was a bit of a trial and error. And then once I figured out, okay, here's my business model, and now I'm marketing it, finding a way to still keep my own excitement about it and the day-to-day of doing it every day. Because now the thing that you love, this is something I didn't realize too. I actually did a YouTube video about this. You gotta, when you start looking at the things that you love and you want to make them into a business, it's very easy to quickly take everything you love and and want to make everything a business. And then when you start having to make money for it, it doesn't take the fun completely out of it, but it changes the dynamic. So you got to keep something that's just, you will never make money about. And that was dancing for me. And then the other thing was my business. And then I had to learn how to monetize that. So all of those were different steps. I think that gives you a pretty good understanding of what my process has been.
Definitely. And I think this is for me also like one of the big shifts, right? Moving from being an employee to owning a business, which is a huge change.
It is. It's so huge. And there's things that you don't even realize that you're like, I thought I understood that. I understood the theory of it. I didn't understand what it looked like to live that. And so I actually became the entrepreneur. I had plenty of those moments.
So if I want to start today, I mean, I'm talking about our listeners, if they want to start something, what would you tell them? How would you advise them to start?
I would say start really simple. And the way that I say start really simple, there were a couple years ago where you had people always saying the first step to starting your business was to become an authority in your business. And they really didn't describe what that meant. Like, what does it look like to become an authority in your business? And so the way that I would say to do that, and it's very helpful I think it's the most important way to start, is to figure out like, what are 3 hills you would die on? What are 3 topics that you are so passionate about? It doesn't matter who invited you on their podcast about it. If they were talking about that topic, you didn't need a script. You didn't need to think about it. You knew, like, you didn't have to rehearse it. If you get 3 of those topics, and you're probably going to start with 10 of them, but you're going to say them over and over again, and you're going to see which ones your audience, the perspectives that your audience really reacts to, and you narrow it down to 3. Once you get those 3, start saying those over all the time. And that's going to help you start to narrow down to what is the thing that your audience is going to be most interested in continuing to learn from you. And then once you get that, that is the way you start making products and things that are going to help help your audience do that. So yeah, that would be how I would, if I were to start all over again, how I would do it.
Yeah, so start focusing on 3 topics, talk about them constantly, right? I mean, I assume on social and then packaging.
Exactly.
Yeah. What are the biggest challenges you see with your clients?
When my clients are, well, first, the first one is that deer in headlights when they're like, wait a minute, I thought I knew myself enough to know exactly what I wanted if I wasn't doing this, but I don't. And that's helping them get over that is the first one. And it's really just, it's a reclamation that, hey, it's okay. Like, it's a part of the process. I went through it too. I made it to the other side. Deep breath. Like, we're good. This is fine. So that's the first one. The second challenge is now that they're back into dreaming, there's so many ideas and it's so exciting and they want to do everything all at once. And while I do believe that you can have everything that you want, doing it all at once is not even the best strategy, if not completely possible. The way that I like to think about it is if you have 10 glasses, and let's say it's 10 different ideas, drinking glasses, and you're trying to fill each of these drinking glasses, if you're have one pitcher and you're pouring water into each of those 10 glasses, you are getting only drops in each of those 10 glasses. That's the same thing you're doing with your ideas when you're trying to do all 10 ideas at once. None of them are getting enough water to really wet the bottom of the cup. So you got to pick, I would say, start with at least 3. But if you really want to do this well, focus on one. And I know that's so hard because we have so many multi-passionate creatives. I can't just focus on one. I'm not saying to murder the other 9 ideas. I'm just saying start with one. And then if that one doesn't feel like it's right, then you could come back to it. But start with one and pour that water just into that cup and allow it to fully fill and go from here. So that's the second thing that they try to do everything all at once and they get freaked out if you tell them maybe you should focus. uh, Number 3, I would say, is once you finally find what you're focusing on, and it takes time, don't bully yourself into creating a time limit. I was just reading The Gap and the Gain from Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy. And the last quote, it's like the last one. And I'm like, oh, it's mic drop. It was so good. He said, don't get bogged down by their goals. They get bogged down by the timeline, by the deadline that they put on their goals. And I thought that was so profound because the biggest part of building this business is not that it happens by a certain date and time that you hope it happens. It's learning the persistence and learning to keep putting one step in front of the other to give this, I'm going to say plant, you're thinking of your business as a plant, the time and the water and the nutrients and the sun that it needs to fully blossom. And we want to decide, I want this plant to blossom in 24 hours. And the plant is like, I don't blossom based on your time, on what you decided, boo. Like, that's not how it works. And so when you take that deadline off and allow yourself to just enjoy the process, that's the other part of making sure you truly enjoy the process, regardless of the money you make, because that will help you continue to stay persistent as things go.
Wow, that's fun. Those are fantastic insights. I took some notes about the book, so I'll put the recommendation there. Thank you so much, Rashidat. And before
My
we end our
pleasure.
call today, tell our listeners how they can.
Yes. So I have a website. I am rashidato.com, and all of my handles are I am rashidato. It's best to get me at TikTok or YouTube. Those are my most engaging platforms. And then also you can get on my email list. But yeah, all of my content is around helping you fully enjoy life, not just when at work. A lot of us, we already know how to work hard. We've never need practice in that. Instead, we need practice in learning how to really enjoy our lives while we're also working. And so I'm excited to help do that.
Thank you so much. That it was a pleasure.
Thank you for having me. It was such a good activity talking to you as well.
Thank you so much for listening to the episode. I hope it was valuable for you. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcasting platform and share it with any woman who needs to hear it. And I'll see you next week. Bye.